Okay, first, we're going to talk about the weather. This is a very important topic because this is something we talk about almost every day, really. When I talk to people like my students or family members or friends, oftentimes we start the conversation by talking about the weather that day. It's a very common point of discussion. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about the weather in my hometown, which is San Diego, California. And then we'll talk about weather in other parts of the world. So in San Diego, we have famous weather. Our weather is renowned throughout the country because it's known as being very nice, very mild. When something is mild, that means it's not too strong or extreme. So if I say that we have mild winters in San Diego, that means that our winters are not very cold or very extreme. They're mild. Okay? So San Diego has mild weather. We have warm summers, and I think we have warm springs and autumns too, in my opinion. Other people might disagree, but I think they're pretty warm. And then even our winter is not cold. It's mild, like I said. I wouldn't say that it's very warm, but on many days in the wintertime, you can go outside with shorts and a t-shirt. It's very common for people to do that in December or January, depending on the weather that day. It's not always like that in the winter, but many days are like that. So it's a very nice winter, in my opinion, because I don't like cold winters. But if you're used to cold winters and snow and low temperatures, you won't like San Diego winters because it doesn't feel like the winter to people who are accustomed to real winters. Okay? So our weather is classified as semi-arid. Arid just means dry. So if the climate is arid, that means it doesn't rain a lot. So San Diego is semi-arid, and it can also be classified as Mediterranean. So it has similar weather to places like maybe the south of Spain or Portugal or France, Italy, Greece. It probably has similar weather to those places. So it's very nice. It's a famous destination, a popular destination for vacationers because of the weather. So, in terms of weather in other parts of the world, usually it's more extreme than in San Diego. For example, I have many students in Russia. In Russia, the winters are very cold. It can get down to minus 30 degrees even, right? Depending on where you are. I can't even imagine that type of winter, but I'm sure some of you have experienced that before. In other parts of the world, like in Africa or some parts of Central America, South America, Asia, many places, Europe, in many places it gets really hot. It's the other extreme. I know that in some places it can get up to 50 degrees even. That's pretty crazy. For most of us, that seems really, really hot. Just a side note, since I'm American, I should tell you that in the US, we don't use Celsius, we use Fahrenheit. So normally, if you talk to Americans and you ask them about the weather in their city, they'll respond with something like this. It's 75 degrees today. If you don't know anything about Fahrenheit, that would probably seem crazy. 75 degrees? Well, that's not that hot. It's just a different system of measuring the temperature. In the rest of the world, we use Celsius, but in the US, we use Fahrenheit, so it's a little difficult to talk about the weather with Americans if you're not from America. So, in terms of extreme weather, I already mentioned Russian winters or summers in hot countries like in the Sahara, for example. We can see a huge range of temperatures, but we also have extreme weather in terms of storms. So in certain places, we have phenomena like hurricanes or tornadoes or floods or things like that. So, for example, in the southeast of the United States, there are hurricanes like every year. You've probably heard of some of these. The most famous one in the last couple decades was Hurricane Katrina, which was very devastating to the state of Louisiana. So hurricanes can do a lot of damage to a city or to many cities, really. And then tornadoes are a phenomenon that happens in the middle of the U.S. So if you live in places like Oklahoma or Nebraska or Kansas, you're in tornado country. So a tornado is kind of like a circular air pattern that gets really, really strong and can destroy buildings and do a lot of damage. It causes a lot of damage when it rolls through a city in the middle of the U.S. Luckily, I've never experienced hurricanes or tornadoes before, and I hope I never do. And I hope you don't have to deal with those types of storms either. One thing that I do have to deal with is flooding. Right now in my city, there are a lot of floods. I currently live in Guadalajara, Mexico, but I'll probably be moving pretty soon. But right now I'm in Guadalajara, and here in the summertime, there's a lot of rain. And the city is really unprepared for this rainy season. So the streets flood with water. When the streets flood, that means that the water builds up and rises and it doesn't go away. So the streets become like rivers. I'm sure some of you have experienced this as well in your cities, but I think it's awful. I hate the rainy season here because we always have these floods. So if you don't have floods in your city, you should feel lucky. They're not fun to deal with. The hottest weather I've ever experienced is, I think, about 47, 48 degrees maybe. And I think that was in Las Vegas. And the coldest weather I've ever been in is, I think, -2 or -3 degrees maybe. I really haven't been in cold weather before. I'm sure some of you are laughing right now because for many of you, -2 or -3 degrees is not cold or not very cold. But for me, it's freezing.